the disappearance of Edward V and his younger brother Richard of Shrewsbury, Duke of York, from the Tower of London in 1483, stands as one of the most enduring enigmas of English history. Known as the Princes in the Tower, the two boys were placed under the care of their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, shortly before he claimed the crown as Richard III. They were never seen again. Over the centuries, the mystery of their fate and the question of who was responsible has sparked fierce debate. Solving this historical riddle requires more than assigning blame. It demands a deep dive into the turbulent political climate of the late 15th century and an examination of the motives of those who stood to benefit from the boys' demise. By analyzing the suspects and the sources that frame the story, we can better understand both the historical context and the narratives that have endured. Most modern perceptions of Richard III are shaped by William Shakespeare's portrayal of him as a deformed, power-hungry villain, but Shakespeare was no historian. As a playwright working under the Tudor monarchy, he had every reason to paint Richard in the worst possible light. The Tudors, particularly Henry VII, needed to legitimize their tenuous claim to the throne after defeating Richard at Bosworth in 1485. Branding Richard as a child-murdering tyrant conveniently served that purpose. Shakespeare's interpretation drew heavily from sources such as Sir Thomas More's History of King Richard III, written during the early Tudor period. The dramatic embellishments, Richard's hunchback, his scornful sneer, his scheming soliloquies, helped cement his reputation as a Machiavellian villain. While these elements have captivated audiences for centuries, they tell us more about Tudor propaganda than about the man himself. Thomas More's account, written decades after the princes vanished, unequivocally accuses Richard of their murder. More claims that Richard ordered Sir James Tyrrell to kill the boys, smothering them as they slept. The narrative is vivid, almost cinematic, but deeply problematic. More wrote under Henry VIII, son of Henry VII, and had strong incentives to align with Tudor political narratives. He wasn't an eyewitness, and his sources remain murky. Much of his account likely stems from hearsay or court gossip. The dramatic nature of his writing suggests an intent to moralize rather than document facts. Nevertheless, his accusations carry weight as one of the earliest written indictments of Richard III. Richard III himself had the most apparent motive, consolidating his power. As long as Edward V and his brother were alive, Richard's hold on the throne was precarious. By declaring the boys illegitimate, citing an alleged pre-contract of marriage involving Edward IV, he sought to neutralize them as political threats. Yet this legal maneuver didn't entirely erase their potential as rallying figures for opposition. Richard also had the opportunity as the boys were in his custody. However, no direct evidence connects him to their deaths. Some argue that keeping the princes alive, perhaps in secret exile, would have been politically advantageous, avoiding the scandal and suspicions tied to their disappearance. Indeed, the rumors of their deaths cast a long shadow over Richard's reign and likely undermined his support. Sir James Tyrrell, identified by More as the man who carried out the murders, confessed to the crime during Henry VII's reign. Yet his confession, long lost to history, raises more questions than it answers. Given more than a decade had passed and that it occurred under the rule of a monarch eager to blacken Richard's name, the confession's reliability is dubious. Without corroborating evidence, Tyrrell's role remains speculative. Henry Tudor, who became Henry VII, also had strong motives for eliminating the princes. If they were alive after 1485, they posed a grave threat to his reign as Yorkist heirs with stronger claims to the throne than his own. After Richard's defeat, Henry gained control of the Tower and could have ordered their deaths. Yet intriguingly, no contemporary sources accuse Henry of the crime, an absence that might reflect his political acumen or a lack of direct involvement. Margaret Beaufort, Henry VII's formidable mother, has also been implicated by some theorists. Known for her unrelenting ambition and keen political instincts, she may have encouraged or even orchestrated the prince's deaths to secure her son's position. However, her direct access to the princes was limited, and no concrete evidence links her to their fate. Her role, if any, likely came through political strategy rather than physical action. Another candidate is Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham. Once a staunch ally of Richard III, Buckingham later rebelled against him. Some speculate that Buckingham might have murdered the princes to curry favour with Henry Tudor, or destabilise Richard's rule. As a powerful noble with access to the Tower, Buckingham had the means and potentially the motive. However, like so many others, his involvement remains conjectural, and his swift downfall further complicates the narrative. Among the more unexpected suspects is the boy's own mother, Elizabeth Woodville. Some theories suggest she colluded with Richard III, or arranged for the princes to be hidden to protect them. Her eventual reconciliation with Richard and withdrawal from political life under Henry VII lend some credence to these ideas. Yet such theories lack substantial evidence, and it's hard to imagine a mother willingly placing her children in danger. One enduring possibility is that the princes were never murdered at all. Instead, they may have been smuggled out of the Tower and lived in hiding. Claims like that of Perkin Warbeck, who posed as Richard, Duke of York, attracted significant support among disaffected Yorkists in the 1490s. While Warbeck's campaign was ultimately crushed by Henry VII, it underscores the uncertainty surrounding the prince's fate. Skeptics note that had the boys survived, they likely would have re-emerged during Richard's reign, when they posed the greatest threat to his legitimacy. Nevertheless, the lack of definitive remains or evidence keeps alive the tantalizing idea of their survival. However unlikely, the fate of the princes in the Tower remains a historical enigma, tangled in politics, propaganda, and speculation. Richard III had both motive and opportunity, but lacked decisive proof of guilt. Sir James Tyrrell's alleged confession emerged under politically charged conditions that undermine its credibility. Henry VII and his allies too had compelling motives, but their involvement is unproven. Ultimately, this mystery highlights how history is shaped as much by the victors as by the evidence. Tudor narratives, epitomized by Shakespeare, cast Richard III as a convenient villain while obscuring alternative possibilities. The truth may remain elusive, but the story of the princes in the Tower serves as a poignant reminder of how power and propaganda intertwine to shape the past and our perception of it.